Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Karen Wilson. I am not alone today, so I hope you will join me in welcoming Samantha Foote to the podcast. Samantha is a board-certified neurologic music therapy fellow and positive discipline parent educator. She is dedicated to leveraging the power of music to support neurodivergent individuals, and she also works closely with parents to develop positive, effective strategies that promote their child's growth. Her work explores the intersection of creativity and therapeutic intervention, showing us how music can be combined with occupational, speech, and even behavioral therapies to foster social skills, positive behavior, and emotional regulation. I am thrilled to have Samantha joining us for this conversation today.
Millions of kids struggle with learning, processing, and social emotional difficulties. These challenges interfere with their ability to reach their full potential. Dr. Karen Wilson is here to help. Her extensive background in pediatric neuropsychology and higher education have prepared her for this unique mission. Listen as she delivers content to inform, educate, and empower parents and educators. This will enable you to identify challenges that kids face and get them on the road to achieving their full potential. This is Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus.
Hi, Samantha. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you here as well, and I really appreciate you being here. This is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while because, as a neuropsychologist, I'm diving into all the things that enhance brain and brain connections and support brain development, and music therapy keeps coming up again and again. And so when I was connected with you, I was really excited to be able to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Music therapy is amazing. So,
and I'd love to kind of start by telling us about how you got into music therapy in general, because it's not something that people kind of wake up and say, this is what I want to do. I'd love to hear kind of what inspired you to specialize in music therapy, in particular, supporting neurodivergent individuals through music.
Yeah, I was in high school and I was weird. I was only a junior and I said, I need to know what I'm studying in college. And so I got on, I think it was like collegereview.net or something. It was in 2003. Who knows what it was. Okay. But they mentioned music therapy and I was like, what is that? And so looking back on it, the way they described it was awful, but it got me into the field. So that's all that matters, because I really wanted to study something in psychology, but I didn't want to give up music, and I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a performer. I wanted to use music functionally. And I'm like, there has to be a way to do that. And that's how I found music therapy. It's a perfect blend of psychology and music.
Right. And were you a musician before?
Yeah, I played the piano since I was 4.
Oh.
And then I was in band. I was in choirs. Yeah.
So like you said, that's a great way of pairing both of those things, the music and the therapy. And for those who might not be familiar, can you explain what music therapy is? Any unique aspects of neurologic music therapy that you could share? That would be really helpful.
Yes, I like to explain music therapy in the simplest of terms. It is using music to accomplish non-musical goals. And so you can address goals such as social skills, emotional skills, cognitive, communication, and motor skills. And we just address those things using music. And so music accesses more of your brain than any other stimulus. So it can access different parts of your brain. So, for example, I really like to use the example of Gabby Gifford, she was a congresswoman and she sustained a traumatic brain injury. When she was in the hospital, the brain injury was in her communication center. And so that was obliterated. And so they needed to access a different part of her brain to get speech again. So the music accessed a different part of her brain. She was able to sing, and then she was able to talk. And then she was able to talk without using the music because it built new neural pathways in her brain so that she could speak again. She wasn't just getting music therapy. She was getting, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, all those different things. But the music was able to bridge the gap between what those therapies couldn't access.
Right. And that's just such another great example of how music therapy can positively impact the brain, particularly in a brain injured population. And obviously that expands to neurodivergent youth. And I love that you mentioned again that music stimulates multiple areas of the brain and it can do so simultaneously. So it can help with memory, with attention, with emotional processing. And for neurodivergent individuals, this multisensory stimulation is particularly beneficial for enhancing cognitive function and emotional regulation.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the clients that I work with, we either do social emotional if they're older, or motor skills or communication skills. So I really like working, like with the 4-year-olds or the 2-year-olds, whatever, that aren't speaking. And then I just have to tell you about one of my clients. I'm so excited. He was non-speaking and we started music therapy and I sing books to him. And so I'll get you can sing any book that rhymes and you can just make up a melody for it. I use the Music Together books usually, and Music Together is just a program for early intervention. It's for like mommy and me classes, but then they expanded it to therapy. And so we started singing the books, and then the goal is for him to like hum the melody and then sing the melody and then say the words without the music support. And he has started making sounds on his own. And the other day I was singing this song about a sandpiper and I paused because I wanted him to say the sound. And he just whips out the word sandpiper. And I'm like, what is happening right now? It was one of the best moments of my career because he was so proud of himself too. And so now he'll say different words as well as like saying new sounds. And so that's really what I'm trying to accomplish, like with communication. And I'm not taking the place of a speech therapist. Like he gets speech therapy in addition to music therapy. The music therapy supports what the speech therapist is doing.
Right. That's amazing. And that's why we do the work that we do, right? It's to make that impact. And it kind of reminds me of studies that I've seen that show that autistic children, through rhythmic activities and musical games, it actually reinforces speech patterns. So it complements the work that these kids are doing with speech therapists. And it seems like it would encourage this interaction in like a non-threatening and engaging way when you're using music that way.
Yeah, so music is extremely motivating. It really ups the dopamine in your system. So I've done co-treatments with other therapists where maybe they're not having a lot of luck getting the kids to do what they want them to do. And then I'll bring in music and the music will stimulate the brain to like do a movement if they're trying to do a movement. If, they're working on bear crawls or something like that. I'll sing a song about walking like a bear and then we walk like different animals and it just stimulates the brain to do that movement. You use the music in a really intentional way to get them to do the movement that you want them to do. And then one time I worked with a speech therapist and the child had hydrocephalus and he couldn't process questions that were spoken, but he could process it if they were sung. And so I would sing the question and he would answer. And then we slowly backed out the music. And then he was able to answer questions. He was able to process questions that were just spoken to him.
Right. And it just amazes me how the brain works, when you give examples like that. And there's so many case studies that show this, but it's so great that we're getting some more research and support behind it so that people can implement it in practice like you're doing, and also show again how music therapy can complement other therapeutic approaches. You mentioned speech therapy, and it seems that it would also be a nice complement to occupational therapy and maybe even behavioral interventions.
Yeah, we use music for behavioral intervention. I'm working with a kid who he just has a really hard time processing emotions. And so and he's older, he's probably like 12 or 13. And so we write songs and we talk about different emotions. And one thing with the neurodivergent population too is that they tend to have concrete thinking. So it's not really flexible thinking. The way like that they think is the way that it is. And so we will talk about an emotion, let's say anger, and then we will write a song about anger. And I'll say anger tastes like, anger feels like, and just go through the five senses, the five main senses. And that really helps increase the flexible thinking because they're like, well, anger doesn't taste like anything. And I just say, well, imagine that it tasted like something. What would it taste like? And so we're increasing the flexible thinking. We're increasing the ability to think, well, maybe my way of thinking isn't the only way of thinking. And then we're also processing the anger emotion because then we go through the five emotions and there are five senses. And then we'll say, I feel anger when, and we'll identify 4 times that they might feel anger. And then when I feel anger, I can. And then identify 4 things that they can do when they're feeling anger. And then we use GarageBand to write a song to go as backup music to, it's kind of like a rap because we're not making up a melody, but they're just saying the words on top of the music background.
Right. And there's so many skills built in there into what you're describing, beyond just the emotional regulation. You're sequencing, you're writing songs, you're developing those language skills. And then again, you're developing these executive functioning skills because that's what flexibility is.
Yeah. If people are like, well, what goal are you working on? I'm like, there are so many goals built into one intervention that we're targeting one thing, but it's also helping all these other things like you just said.
Right. Yes. And it's such a beautiful way to individualize the treatment based on the goals and the things that the student needs to be working on. And it seems that music therapy has the ability to do that, to impact so many different areas. And you can specifically choose which goals based on the area where the student needs support.
Yeah. We can definitely like zero in on what they need and tailor each intervention to what they need.
Right. So I know a lot of students need support with social skills, social interaction. You mentioned communication. How does music therapy, and can it specifically support, building social interaction skills and social skills?
Yes, this was the best moment of my career thus far, I think. I had a kid come to me. He was 7. And I like to ask kids, what do you want to work on? Like, what goals do you want to work on? I ask the parents too, but I also ask the kid because I think it's important for them to be working on things that they want to work on. And he said, I want a friend. I want a best friend. Everyone else has a friend. I want a friend at school. I said, okay. So we worked on social skills and he was in a group. And we worked on the flexible thinking. And so we worked on taking turns. We talked about, like sarcasm. He really struggled with flexible thinking and sarcasm. And so we did like improvisation where I'd give him an instrument and say, play this in an angry way or play this in a happy way. And he's like, I can't do that. I don't know what that is. And so we worked on that. And then we did talk about the different social, rules that we have in our culture that maybe aren't so obvious to people. And we wrote songs, we played instruments, we, in the group, we took turns, we, asked for different opinions, all of that. And then about 3 months later, he came to me and he's like, I made a friend.
Oh.
And I cried because I was so excited for him that he made a friend.
Well, he achieved his goal. That's what he wanted. And we know how much connection is, how important connection is in our daily lives, for our overall well-being. And so it's wonderful that he was able to achieve that.
Yeah. I think that's a misconception about neurodivergent people is I've heard a lot of people say, well, they don't want friends. They don't want to do things with people. Like when I was in high school, there was this kid that came to a church dance that I was at, and I was trying to talk to him, and everyone's like, oh, don't talk to him. He doesn't want to make friends. He's autistic, and he doesn't care about interacting with people. And I'm like, well, he wouldn't be here if he didn't care about interacting with people. And I think that's a huge misconception that people who are neurodivergent want that connection. they might not know how to make that connection. Like this kid, the 7-year-old, he didn't know how to enter a group of his peers. He didn't know how to talk to them because of all these like unwritten rules that are in our culture. And so they just need support, and they definitely do want connection.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's not that they don't want it. They just don't know how to establish it and maintain it.
Yeah. Yes.
And I mean, you've described such impactful work that you're doing. And are there types of music, and you mentioned rap, or types of musical activities that you typically use in your session? Does it vary depending on the age of the child? And it sounds like you're mentioning group, but you also do it one-on-one. I'd love to hear more about what the sessions look like.
Yeah, the music is totally up to the client. I definitely have songs like in my back pocket that I use all the time. But for example, we were in a group, and this kid we were dancing with scarves to work on motor skills. And he was like, I want to listen to Chumbawamba. And I was like, what? So like back from the 90s. And so we listened to that song. And then other people requested other songs that I would have never thought that they would have liked to listen to. And so I definitely ask the kids and adults like what music they want, and we go from there. And then an individual session and group sessions, they kind of follow the same outline, where you start with a hello song just to get everybody, like in the right mind frame of now we're starting music, and that hard like transition of we're starting music now. And then we do different interventions. So, we could play instruments, recreate songs, dance, just move to music, sing. Any of those things can be done in music therapy. We also can do like lyric analysis, where you listen to music and then listen to the words and read the words and then talk about the different lyrics. That's more for like adult groups, like mental health groups, but or like individuals. I don't really do a lot of that with the neurodivergent population, just because we're working on other things. But we can do any of that, and then we always close with a goodbye song. And sessions are usually like 30 minutes to an hour. And yeah, it's just the interventions can vary so greatly. Like last week at one of my sessions, we did guess the Halloween song in a group. And so we were working on like taking turns, and this one kid was guessing the songs within 5 seconds of the song even being on. I was like, okay. And everyone else was getting really frustrated that they didn't even have a chance to like listen to the song. And so I just told him, I'm like, okay, you are doing this so well that I need you to wait 5 seconds before you guess the song. And he's like,
right.
Okay, I can do that. And he totally understood that maybe other people wanted a chance to hear the song first. And so we're working on that. Like if he did have a problem with that, we would have to talk about it and explain. But he was just like, oh, I understand. Like they want to listen to the song before I guess what it is. And I was like, yeah. And so, yeah, it's just the interventions that we do like vary greatly across the board.
Right. And I mean, when I think about music therapy, I think it can be such a joyful and creative outlet for people. And in that regard, it seems like it would increase confidence and even the sense of identity when you're engaging with music in that way. Have you found this increase in confidence in your clients when you're working through music therapy?
Yeah. So this one adult that I work with, she has really, really severe anxiety. And so I'll come and she will pick the song, and she just plays the guitar and I play the bass guitar, and we just play songs the entire time. And that helps her calm down. That helps her gain more confidence in herself, that like when she's feeling anxious, there's something she can do to help her not feel as anxious. And then like the other kid, the 7-year-old that I was talking about, he became way more confident when he accomplished things that he didn't think he could do. Like when I first gave him the instrument and asked him to improvise, he's like, nope, can't do it. And then by the end of it, I would give him an instrument and say, improvise on this emotion. And he would just do it. And he was like, I can do it, and just, I've definitely seen confidence increase. And then sometimes we'll do like piano lessons or guitar lessons, like obviously working on other things, not just them having the lesson. But then they might not have achieved other things and like, done really well in a certain area of their life in other areas. And then they do really well with this piano or guitar and they gain confidence in themselves that they can do hard things.
Right. I can see that. I can see that, how that would kind of show them that they can overcome challenges and become better. It just aligns with developing a growth mindset, right? Something that they weren't able to do in the beginning. Now they're developing skills in that area.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Now, for parents and educators who might be listening to this and who are interested in exploring music therapy, for maybe clients as a complementary therapy, or parents who think this might be a great tool for my child, where do they start? And what should they look for in a certified music therapist?
So I would definitely make sure that the music therapist is board certified. We do have to go through quite the process to become a music therapist. And if your music therapist does not have a degree, at least a bachelor's degree in music therapy, and so this is what we have to do. We have to get a bachelor's degree in music therapy, do an internship for like 1,200 hours, pass a board certification test, and then we become board certified. And after that, you have to do continuing education credits. So there are some people who call themselves music therapists and they are not board certified. And so that's great that they're using music and they can use music in a positive way, but they are not doing music therapy. And you can look up, if they're board certified, cbmt.org. And that is a great place to go to find a music therapist in your area. So you can just type in, I think they have drop down boxes, you type in your zip code and then you put your state, and then they can show you all the music therapists that are board certified in your area.
Okay. And that's really important because, like you said, people can call themselves music therapists, but they may not have the background, the skills, and the credentials to really move the needle and implement musical therapy in the way that it's been implemented in a lot of the research that we're reading about.
Yeah. And I would say too, in some states, you have to be licensed to be a music therapist. And so you can look that up in your state and just make sure that they're following all the regulations in your state. Not all states have licensure, but there are a growing number of states that do.
Okay. And again, for parents listening, are there music activities that you would recommend that that would benefit their children's communication or emotional skills? For example, if they're not able to connect with a music therapist in their area or one is not available?
I would suggest if your child is younger, like between the ages of 0 and 5, the Music Together program is amazing. Their music is it's made to target social skills, communication skills, motor skills. And then they also give you a book to take home and music that you can listen to at home. And it helps you gain those skills because you can listen to it when you're not in the class. And then, there's other music classes like kinder music. There's another one that actually teaches you how to play instruments, like how to play the piano, but I cannot think of what it's called right now. Okay. And my daughter actually did it. And then as they're older, just let them explore different instruments, let them explore piano, or you can play the piano with your kids and just improvise on the piano. If people are a little nervous to improvise on a piano, I suggest just putting your hand on the keys, not moving your hand, and just play whatever keys your hand can reach. And then if you want to play with another person, I suggest only playing on the black keys or only playing on the white keys, but not mixing them both. And that will create a better sound. I guess a more pleasing sound that to our ears. And just you can have dance parties. You can explore different instruments. My husband plays the euphonium, which is just a little tuba. And my 9-year-old has never been interested in music. He's never been interested in playing the piano, playing the guitar, nothing like that. But he loves the euphonium. And so he has been waiting for years to be able to do band, to play the euphonium. And so I would have never thought that, so just getting instruments for your kids just to improvise on.
Right. It seems like having them in the home alone will increase the likelihood that they will use them or at least start exploring.
Yeah. Even if your kids aren't neurodivergent, playing music and listening to music or singing or playing instruments has such a great impact, like on your immune system, on your mental health, like on your physical health, everything. And so you don't have to like have a diagnosis to get a benefit from music.
Right. And you work with parents as well, correct? Do you work with them in the context of music therapy, like helping them develop music-based strategies to work with their kids?
I use the positive discipline curriculum and then also put in neurodivergent things. So I really help parents who are maybe new to the neurodivergent world and they don't really understand it. So their kid just got a diagnosis of autism or ADHD, or maybe their kid isn't even diagnosed yet and they need help. And so I help them. We don't always talk about music interventions. There is one part of the program that does talk about music interventions, like calming strategies using music. But for the most part, we don't really use music unless it's, really necessary or it can really help them. Like I definitely use music as appropriate, but it's not based in music.
Okay. And it seems that music therapy, from what you're saying, helps the little ones, right? All from preschool all the way up through adulthood, because you mentioned working with adults as well.
Yeah, I have worked with kids as young as 6 months old. And then I've worked in assisted living facilities too. So I've worked the whole range. And then music therapy is also used in like hospice or hospitals, prisons, schools. It's everywhere.
Right. Samantha, I cannot thank you enough for joining us and really sharing all that you know, all of your expertise, because it really shows the transformative potential of music, not just as an art form, but as a therapeutic tool. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was happy to talk about it.
Now, if listeners want to learn more about you and about your work, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
I would say go to everybrainisdifferent.com, or you can look up Every Brain is Different on Instagram, and you will find more about the parenting program, more about music therapy. And then I also have a podcast called Every Brain is Different, where we talk about like how to support neurodivergent individuals.
Wonderful. And I will put links to all of that information in the show notes. Thank you again for being here. It has been great pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
For those of you who want to learn more about music therapy, we have information on how to connect with Samantha in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you learned something today, and if you did, please be sure to share this episode with others. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Diverse Thinking, Different Learning by Child Nexus. For more resources, visit us online at childnexus.com.